Everyone our final webinar of the season. But first, I would like to thank our sponsors, Meta and Union Bank as our major sponsors. Also, our sponsors for the webinar series, the Stowers team of Cross Country Mortgage, Umpqua Bank Home Lending, the Building Industry Association of Bay Area, Bridge Association of Realtors, Alan Mackins, the Housing Trust of Silicon Valley. All of this couldn't have been possible without our support of our promotional partners who are aligned with the mission of the Casita Coalition in creating more housing opportunities statewide. That includes the State of California Housing and Community Development, UC Berkeley's Turner Center, the Association of Bay Area Governments, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, the Southern California Association of Governments, Build It Green, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, Bay Area Council, SPUR, FACE LA, which is Faith and Community Empowerment LA, Community Planning Roundtable, California YIMBY, Circulate San Diego. So thank you all to our promotional sponsors. We have several working groups of the Casita Coalition who are working on several different initiatives and trying to address issues and remove barriers to ADUs and other small forms of housing. And they've produced a couple of guides that are available on our website and also the HCD website. They completed a garage conversion resource guide and also a finance resource guide. And in the new year, we've also looked to publish 2 more resource guides that our working groups are working on. And we also plan on launching a couple of useful online tools for our members of the Casita Coalition. One is a HCD code interpretation and also an ADU gallery of ADUs. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to share. But these are member services. The ADU gallery will be open to the public and also a way to promote your ADUs or your product if you're a builder. So today I'd like to welcome and introduce David Visser. David Zisser was recently hired to lead and expand HCD's new Housing Accountability Unit. This unit will play a critical role in ensuring that local leaders fulfill their legal responsibility to plan, zone for, and permit their share of the state's housing needs through a holistic strategy that combines pro-housing incentives and planning grants to support local jurisdictions to comply with state housing laws, education and technical assistance to help jurisdictions understand the law, and strong accountability actions for noncompliance as needed. So David brings more than 14 years of professional experience in local, regional, and statewide housing policy, advocacy, and accountability. His career has been dedicated to affordable housing, fair housing, equitable development, and environmental justice. So please welcome David Visser.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you so much for having me here today. The Casita Coalition is an incredible resource and a critical partner. And I'm really honestly grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all today. As Tom said, I'm David Zisser, and I am the quite new Assistant Deputy Director for Local Government Relations and Accountability at the California Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD. And before I came to HCD, I worked at 2 public interest civil rights legal organizations and at a statewide affordable housing advocacy organization, where at all of these places I advocated for affordable housing, fair housing, and equitable development, among other things, primarily focusing on the needs of those struggling the most. And that's why I feel so privileged to have joined HCD just 6 weeks ago. After all, the department's mission is to promote safe, affordable homes and vibrant, inclusive, sustainable communities for all Californians. And its vision is that every California resident can live, work, and play in healthy communities of opportunity. And while we need a comprehensive approach, ADUs are an innovative and important part of realizing this vision, and it's a growing part of our work as well. According to an analysis that I'm sure you're all familiar with from the Bay Area Council, the number of ADUs produced in California went from just about 800 in 2013 to more than 12,000 in 2020, going from just 1% of the total units permitted in the state to more than 11%. ADUs are undeniably a growing part of the solution, creating more housing in high opportunity places that have been historically inaccessible to so many of the families and individuals living in these units. At HCD, I oversee the Housing Accountability Unit, or we call it the HAU, part of our Division of Housing Policy Development. The HAU plays a critical role in ensuring that local jurisdictions fulfill their legal responsibility to plan, zone for, and permit their share of the state's housing needs. The HAU takes a holistic approach that combines pro-housing incentives, planning grants, education, and technical assistance to help jurisdictions understand various housing laws, and there are a lot of them, as well as strong accountability actions for non-compliance. This unit is empowered to take escalating enforcement steps to bring persistently non-compliant municipalities into compliance. We work very closely with HCD's Legal Affairs Division, or LAD, as well as with the Attorney General's new Housing Strike Force. This collaboration is exciting, and it brings added capacity and resources to the accountability and enforcement work. And it's hard to overstate how collaborative this collaboration is. The HAU's ADU practice is especially robust. And as with all of our work, whether it's housing elements, density bonus, or any of the other housing laws we have authority to enforce, the idea is to always start collaboratively, providing technical assistance to jurisdictions as well as other stakeholders. We do this through workshops and webinars, through our ADU handbook, which you can find online, and through phone calls, emails, and letters. Only after providing significant technical assistance do we move to an enforcement posture, specifically revoking housing element compliance when appropriate, or notifying the Attorney General's office that a local jurisdiction is in violation of state law and potentially pursuing a lawsuit. This principle of collaboration and partnership is why we provide technical assistance to dozens of homeowners, developers, and local jurisdictions every month. It's the vast majority of the work we do on ADUs. At the same time, we know that implementation and enforcement of our state laws, including ADU law, is a critical part of unlocking the potential for producing the homes that Californians so badly need. In addition to fielding inquiries, we're charged with reviewing local ADU ordinances and letting local jurisdictions know whether those ordinances comply with state ADU law and what specifically they need to do in order to ensure compliance and get into compliance. Just this week, we issued 3 ADU ordinance review letters, finding all 3 ordinances out of compliance with state law. Those cities now have 30 days to respond, and we'll review those responses carefully and reply appropriately. In the meantime, we have dozens more of these reviews in the pipeline, and you'll see a steady pace of these letters coming out. We are at an exciting time. Governor Newsom has signed dozens of housing bills, invested billions of dollars in affordable housing and rental assistance, and has given real teeth and resources to ensure local accountability and to enforce the laws that we have on the books. ADU law has existed in California since the 80s, but only recently has HCD assumed the role of providing technical assistance to the public and to local agencies to promote ADUs and to enforcing state ADU law. But HCD can't do it alone. Folks like you are the ones with your ears to the ground about what's going on in your own communities. Is your city or town blocking ADU projects? Is it adopting restrictions that attempt to get around ADU law or other relevant laws like SB 9? We need you to let us know, and you can email us at adu@hcd.ca.gov. I can put that in the chat in a moment. And we can also provide you with technical assistance so that you can get ADUs off the ground. You can also check out a number of online resources on our ADU page, and you can engage at the local level to ensure your city or town is making it easier, not harder, to develop ADUs. We want you to be our eyes and ears and our partners in this work. Again, thank you for having me here today, for letting me share a bit about HCD's work to promote the development of ADUs, including providing technical assistance, as well as ensuring accountability and enforcement. And thank you for all that you do, whether it's building coalitions or building an ADU on your own property. It all makes a difference. So let's keep moving forward together on creating housing opportunities for all Californians. I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes to answer questions. I would ask you to do me a favor and keep it relatively high level, as I am only 6 weeks on the job. We have lots of experts that I work with who often speak to the Casita Coalition. and can provide those detailed responses. But I'm happy to take some questions now if folks have them.
Thank you, David, so much for joining us. I'm sorry my IT glitched this morning and was unable to log on at the beginning, but
no worry. Nice to see you, Denise.
yeah, likewise. Are folks lining up with questions in the chat? Let's see. So far, we're just saying we'll take a few questions. Well, I have a question. So we are producing, I think Tom mentioned it at the beginning, we've gotten from HCD, thank you very much, all of the interpretive memos that you've issued to cities describing how you believe state law applies in the particular question or context that's been raised. And as I understand it, there are hundreds of these memos, and we've been receiving them and trying to collate them by hand and have upgraded to an online automated search tool. Is that something, and your staff's aware of it and has been working with us on it. Right now it's in beta test mode. It's only available to our members, but is that the sort of tool that would be helpful for HCD to facilitate, expand so that it could be made more widely available?
It sounds like an awesome resource, and I'll go back to my team and get an update on where, what that's all about. We are going to be updating our website at some point. I'm not totally privy to that process, but I think that's a really good idea to put on the table. I can't tell you kind of what the plan is, but it certainly sounds useful.
Great.
Obviously we want the information to be easily accessible and searchable, and we want people to easily be able to find the guidance that they need. Great.
So one question that happens statewide, regardless of the jurisdiction you're in, is how ADUs should be interacting with the with the Coastal Commission, the local coastal plans. That might be too deep a dive for someone who's 6 weeks on the job, but as you get seated and start to learn what's going on, I think we may need to have some conversations about how best to coordinate with the Coastal Commission and each local coastal plan, because statewide there's very uneven local coastal plan responses to the state law. In some counties, I believe that they have made ADUs allowable in the local coastal plans, others they have not. So there's a lot of friction in that space that we might explore. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that you want to share right now.
No, well, mostly that I appreciate the flag. This has come up in conversation internally, not just on ADUs, but sort of the intersection of sort of coastal requirements in coastal zones, and how it intersects with the things that we're doing. So I'll note it as a flag, and again, get with my team about it. I'm glad to have a follow-up conversation.
Great, and I think Tom also mentioned we're doing webinars next year on kind of hot topics in these small housing spaces, SB9 and ADUs both. And one of the hot topics is how do we approach local agencies that have a local coastal plan that probably in its former incarnation didn't allow ADUs at all, or allow them under limited circumstances, and how do we encourage better alignment between state law and the Coastal Commission. So we can revisit this in a few months. Let's see, what else have we got in the Q&A?
Our other questions might be, this is Celeste, our other
Yeah,
questions might be a little too ADU specific for David to field right at this point, but it's something we could address later in the Q&A. We will have a general Q&A.
Great. Well, as folks think about it, be sure to leave us with your questions. And if we don't cover them with David today, we will certainly reach out to him in a future date.
Yeah, I see one question that I can't directly answer in the chat. I know there are others in the Q&A. Sorry, I've got a kid at home who's not happy at the moment. I think just the theme I hope folks will leave with in part is, we're looking at every ADU ordinance that is drafted at the local level. We're charged with that. We have to do it. We have some incredible expertise on staff who are diving into those ordinances, looking at how they compare to state law, including, setback requirements. And if they are in conflict, we are letting them know. We provide a very clear roadmap to jurisdictions about what they need to do to bring their ordinances into compliance on all sorts of things. Setbacks and other things are just one example. So I know that doesn't directly answer the question. And if there are ordinances that are not ADU ordinances, but other parts of the code that folks think may violate ADU law or anything else, you know, I hope folks will let us know. And they, you know, I put the email address in there. And again, I'm probably, you know, if folks want to email us questions, you can do that there.
Great.
So.
Well, thank you. We have a lot. We got a lot going on this morning, so we want to make sure we have time for all of that. But thank you so much for taking the time and for doing this job. It's really important, and we really value your work and your participation and partnership with us as we try and create more housing of all kinds for California.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, David.
Bye-bye.
All right, I'm now pleased to introduce Josh Abrams of Baird & Driscoll Planning. Baird & Driscoll has worked with the Casita Coalition on a number of projects to date, including our initial strategic plan, and has worked with a number of public agencies and metropolitan planning organizations on how best to, how local agencies can really follow best practices in ADUs. So it made sense to us to bring Josh in to review the webinars of the year and try and synthesize what he learned and help us prepare to issue a best practices guidance document along the lines of the best practices guidelines we put together before, although this will be considerably more detailed. And then to help us share that out widely with local agencies around the state so that they get a sense of all of the innovations that are coming from all the different parts of the state. So Josh will walk us through, you know, drum roll please, his summary of ADU best practices around the state of California based on the webinars that we did this year. Josh, there we go. Welcome, Josh.
Great, thank you. I'm really glad to be here. We've been, thank you, Denise. As she said, we've been, Josh Abrams with Baird & Driscoll. We've been helping cities get pro-ADU policies before they were even called ADUs. But you don't want to hear about me. We want to talk about the best practices. My slide's not advancing. Sorry, give me a second to work out technology.
It's always the tech, Josh, no matter what.
There we go. Got to click on the right spot. So I love working with Casita, not just because they're blazing new ground and doing essential work, but also the assignments are fun. So for this webinar, I watched over 13 hours of video and boiled it down to 15 minutes. You should definitely watch the videos, maybe not 3 times like I watched them, but at least once. They're super helpful. There's lots of really good information, a lot of good new ideas, a lot of experimentation going on. Sometimes it works really well. Some things that cities put in place, it's very successful. Other cities, they haven't seen an increase. They're pivoting, they're trying new things. And in a lot of cases, it's just too early to talk about success. So what that means is the answers aren't 100% clear. And that actually ties into why we're going to have an interactive portion in a bit. And we're really going to want your help. But best practices really do make a difference. There's something going on. Why did Garden Grove increase? Why did Pasadena increase in the city who shall not be named? Why did they go down? So we'd want to tease out what's going on and what can cities do to really to not just have high numbers, but increasing numbers. Again, there's no 100% clear answers. Early in the new year, as Denise was saying, we'll write this best practice handbook, but we're going to want your thoughts. So as I go through the highlights of the different webinars, think about what you think are the best practices. We're going to ask you to group them into policies, public information, and processes. It doesn't really have to stick to those categories. We're more interested in your good ideas. And you can also pull any ideas you have from your knowledge anywhere else. We're interested in getting more brains than just a couple thinking about what's important. And a quick disclaimer, some cities, they have a lot going on that they talked about in the webinars, and there just isn't time in my high level summary to talk about it all. Okay, I'm going to start with San Diego. There's two things I really love about San Diego. On the policy front, they've done a great job of making really permissive pro ADU standards. They allow 1,200 square foot ADUs, 0-foot setbacks, 3 foot in height. They also cleaned up their code. There was some messiness where different planners were giving different advice, which drives homeowners crazy. So like the definition of efficiency kitchen, they made sure they were clear with all of those things. They also reduced the fees from around $25,000 to $5,000, which is a moderate incentive in terms of the actual total construction costs. But reducing fees is it's like a sale. It's a huge incentive, even if percentage-wise total construction cost, it's not a big difference. Homeowners really respond to it if you publicize it. They also have a density bonus program where they allow one additional market rate ADU for each affordable ADU. And it's unlimited near transit, just based on the site, how many you can get in and the zoning standards. And this has been really successful. It's produced over 100 units. If you look at a lot of affordability programs, homeowners have been resistant to do an uptake of them or to use them. But the San Diego one, that's a nice, strong, strong, good incentive and a pretty straightforward, easy to explain program. So you do see a lot of use, which is great. I can't say enough great things about the Napa Sonoma ADU Center. It's a nonprofit that reduces the burden on cities in a dozen different ways. It shows the power of collaboration and also foundation support. And that's going to be essential for the smaller or the lower resource jurisdictions. There's no way that it's not a coincidence that most of the jurisdictions that are talking about best practices are the more wealthy ones or the larger ones that have more resources. And the smaller ones, the only way most of them are going to be able to produce great quality material is to get together with their neighbors. And so that's what the Napa Sonoma ADU Center is. They partner, they're a nonprofit, but they partner with all the cities to produce great information, do trainings, and hopefully make planners' jobs easier by answering a lot of the questions that ordinarily would come to the planners. You need a whole webinar to talk about everything the Napa Sonoma ADU Center and the counties in Napa and the cities are doing, and there is one, you should watch it. But just a snippet of their website. This is a snippet of their website. They have resources for people at all stages, from I'm thinking about building to I'm ready to build to completed. They have their own, if 13 hours of Casita webinars aren't enough for you, there's a dozen more hours on the Napa Sonoma, both how videos, informational videos, and also really nice inspirational stories. They're doing free customized ADU feasibility reports where they'll go out and walk a site with homeowners. They have an ADU calculator, an affordable ADU program, an address lookup, a workbook, handouts, a vendor registry, the feasibility reports that they're about to launch. Some of these are pre-approved ADU, pre-approved or permit ready standard plans. And are starting a affordable ADU program. And this is a $300,000 budget, not $300,000 per jurisdiction. This is a total of $300,000. Some more work for some of these special things, but that's kind of their base budget to work with. If all counties could have such a thing, it would be a great step forward. And if you should have watched all hours of all of the Casita ones, but if you want to watch Renee's minute 36, where she gives her recommendations, I'll just pause and everyone can read them. It's a great place to start. Okay, San Jose was one of the early leaders. They were really out in front, and the leadership came from the top. Often what happens in a lot of cities is planning's on board, but other departments like building and fire are pulled in other directions. And what happened in San Jose and some of the other cities is the mayor was out in front and really told all the departments to be pro ADU and to identify what they could do. So they created a SWAT team, like a ADU SWAT team, for each department to identify what they needed to work on. And they kept working on it. In their webinar, they talked a lot about the Tiny Home on Wheels program, which allows, it sounds like Tiny Home on Wheels, but they kind of admitted it didn't work that well, but there were a bunch of lessons they learned and they kept coming back at it, learning, adapting and improving. And this is their oh, I see, sorry. This is some particulars of their program. Their ADU checklist, the universal, everything you need to do and know, has been super copied and has been a great model for a bunch of other cities. They also clarified rules, went back into their code, looked at what the rules are, windows and stairs, which were some of the friction points. And also they have good policies like 2-story ADUs and 0-foot setbacks. Los Angeles, again, there was real strong leadership from the mayor's office, a proclamation calling for 10,000 ADUs. And then they just focused on how to, once they had that leadership from the top, they focused on how to make it happen. And the 22% of, if not more, of the building permits have been ADUs in recent years. Also in the webinar, they talked a lot about their pre-approved ADU program. They get their permitting done in one day. There's 42 plans out there. One thing to think a little about if you're interested, there's two real models. Los Angeles did this marketplace model where they connect property owners to architects that are interested in, that have built a plan and gone through the program. Other cities do city-owned plans where they pay an architect to design the plans, or they design them in-house. Personally, I'm a real big fan of the marketplace model. I think the government can do a great job of helping the private sector lay the groundwork. And there's liabilities and other challenges coming with owning the ADUs. Also publicity. This way you have 42 different people out there, or dozens, because some of them have 2 ADUs, but dozens of people out there pointing to the website and encouraging people to use it. Sometimes if the city owns the plans, it's hard to get them used. Both are good. My personal preference is the marketplace. Pasadena, the next frontier in ADUs is definitely equity and affordability. Asian, Latinx, and Black families are more likely to be more multi-generational, so you'd expect more ADUs, but they're often underrepresented. And many homeowners have struggled to attract people. Many affordable programs have struggled to attract people to participate. Homeowners are really loath to sign long-term contracts or make really commitments long into the future. And it's also, from a jurisdiction side, it's really actually hard to do the income verification. Pasadena came up with a really nice model. They have 2, but one of them, both are similar. One of them provides short-term financing and project management to get through the permitting process. And then in exchange, the only request is to rent to a Section 8 homeowner. Oftentimes it's hard to find landlords to rent to Section 8, particularly in neighborhoods with good schools, access to parks, things like that. So by doing that, it solves the income verification problem. And the hope is, even though there's a short-term commitment to using Section 8, once they meet their tenants and actually in the Section 8 program, the hope is they'll keep doing it longer term. So they've done a great job. Still early, a little early to say too many results, but it's a nice model. Sacramento is up to an awful lot with missing middle housing and by right housing. With ADUs, they're throwing a whole bunch of things at the wall. Some of them are surely going to stick and help make a real good difference. They relaxed their standards, allowing 0-foot setbacks and 2 ADUs on a lot. 2 ADUs on a lot is unusual, and it's 2 detached or whatever you want. They're also rolling out a new website, video case studies, a bunch of outreach activities, including my favorite, the ADU bootcamp. East Palo Alto is another great example of try again. The first attempt would not have landed them on this best practice webinar, as they say in their webinar. It was enforcement based with lots of red tags, which caused displacement and caused a lot of community concern. They paused, did lots of outreach, built support, which is so important in order to support good, stronger ADU policies, and also built up community partners and nonprofit groups and groups that the low-income community, that East Palo Alto is a low-income community, groups that they trusted. So EPA Can Do and SOUP, and a whole nice ecosystem, the people at Stanford, a whole nice ecosystem of nonprofits all working together to help low-income homeowners get ADUs either renovated or built. San Francisco, They, again, good leadership from the top with the mayor publicly charging clear this backlog of ADUs. Each agency had to identify a point person. On the process side, what they do is do concurrent review and do a unified set of comments. It's so helpful to get all those comments together and not timely together, not have sequential comments and not have conflicting comments. They have designated staff and ADU hours at the counter, which is really helpful for nervous homeowners. And they have a great multifamily ADU program, which has waivers from zoning controls in exchange for participating in the rent stabilization. Now, a big clue disclaimer, most single family homeowners terrified of rent stabilization. It's a deal killer for lots and lots of people. San Francisco's multifamily owners were already used to it and are not so afraid. So big caveat, it works there, but make sure that it would work the way you set it up. San Mateo, I love all the products that San Mateo has produced. They have a workbook. This is a interactive, write on it, tons of kind of just very user-friendly, glossy version. It has, when you're ready to hire a designer, here are some questions to ask. When you're ready to meet with your city, here are some questions to ask. And then Spot just to write those questions down, write those answers down in the book. What are your goals? A little worksheet to figure out your goals and your concerns. It's so user-friendly, really, really nice product. Also, they have great videos. This is an ADU calculator that is now actually, thanks to the Chan Zuckerberg initiative, any cities that are interested can get a free version of this and we'll help you. I'm working on that project, we'll help you set it up. So contact me if you're interested in the ADU calculator. They also have managed to get their processing time for ADUs down to 10 days, which is great. We use it contracting with a nonprofit group. And they also partner with a nonprofit group, Palo Housing, to get a select number of people with full service from start to finish. One thing to think about if you're going to work with a nonprofit, the Napa Sonoma's model is a little more low cost, get people started. The Hello Housing model is a little more, make sure you get them through the finish line, through all steps, either depending on your jurisdiction and your homeowner needs and your budget. They're both great models. And Oakland, keys to equity. Oakland has a focus on racial equity in ADUs implementation, particularly low and moderate income homeowners, nonprofit, and they did a great job with nonprofit partnerships who are familiar with home ownership. They're also a really nice example of being thoughtful before you start, before you jump in. So they actually have a number of things going on with their partnership with Richmond Neighborhood Housing Services. They have some pre-development funding, which for low-income homeowners can be really important. They have trainings, a 6-part training series for homeowners to know everything they need to know. Loans are available from a local credit union. Homeowners can choose one of 3 designs. They have some pre-approved designs to cut costs and speed up the process, and they provide construction management throughout. Okay, 15 minutes, right on schedule. Again, if you can, go back and watch those videos. They're really great. We're gonna pivot. We'll do questions. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions in a couple minutes. But first, we wanna get your help with thinking about what are some of the best practices, either that you saw when you watched the webinars or or I talked about. First, we're gonna show you a link. Actually, I guess we're gonna show you a site where you can move some sticky notes around. Then you're gonna vote for your favorite. And if you can't use the program, just chat us your thoughts and we'll add the sticky notes. I have to change how I'm sharing my screen in order to.
And while Josh pulls this together, just to let people know, while we listen to the cities that were able to make presentations this year where we knew best practices existed, we don't know everything. And the power of working in coalition, that together we know a lot more than any one or two of us know. So this is a moment for us to use the power of each of our individual experience and expertise in this policy area to make sure that we're really capturing the wide variety of innovations and elevating the ones that are the most effective at streamlining making it easier for homeowners, making more affordable housing available, et cetera. So this is our moment to make sure that we all get a collective review of this. And then obviously when we publish the document, there'll be a review draft as well.
Okay, so we'll give you a link to this in a second, but basically you can just, if you can read these and see if you like our list, if there's things we forgot, you just click on a sticky note, drag it over and drop it, double click, and you can type. And then in a minute, we're going to put that sticky note back. In a minute, we're going to have everyone, well, we have some stars here. We'll uncover those and you can vote. But let's start by just getting the list of things. And we'll ask everyone just to vote on your favorite. What are really the key ones for cities to focus on that are the most impactful programs? You can move around the screen by just grabbing somewhere where there's nothing written and moving. You can zoom either by doing Control+ or going down here and zooming in down there. And then you'll want to, if right now it's sharing the full screen, you'll want to get out of full screen mode by hitting escape or minimize or whatever you do. Again, if it's too complicated, don't just put in chat what you want us to write for you. If you're comfortable going to the mural link, go for it. Daisy, why don't you put in the link and we can let everyone explore on their own. And we have 10 minutes for this exercise? How long do we have?
Yeah, about
10 minutes.
Someone chatted us to add the San Mateo unpermitted ADU program as an example of a best practice. They didn't talk about that as much in their webinar, but it is apparently the best one we've heard of. So
great. And Daisy in our office is gonna be adding any ideas that people have.
it's funny that it says visiting sea turtle.
Who's the sea turtle?
I think the other thing when as people are voting this, we'll share the draft with our members. And if there are people, we'll share it with our friends in academia at USC, UC Berkeley, and UCLA, other places as well. I think we have some folks at LA Community College, just to make sure that we've hit the mark so that this document is as helpful as possible. So thanks for your early corrections before we have the draft document. It'll help us with the drafting. And why people are voting, I also want to give a big shout out to Casita Coalition staff member Celeste Goye, who put in a huge amount of time with Josh reviewing these webinars, taking notes, and thinking through how best to frame the information, as well as board member Jared Basler, who's been really involved in helping pull this together.
I know there's more ideas out there that we didn't do. We would love to get your thoughts on them. Thank you for those who are doing it.
Our votes coming in, Josh. I'm doing this
We're not quite voting yet. We're still getting a few more ideas.
I'm going to answer some questions that came up in the Q&A while people are voting. One of them was, does HCD work closely with Californians for Home Ownership? I know that they talk to each other periodically. Obviously, they're doing work in similar areas. You know, what's the state law and how is it being implemented? So, Joe, I hope that answers your question. Terry had questions about the Coastal Commission. That's something we're going to have to talk about some more in the next year. I need to learn more about it personally. HCD recommendations for height limits. So HCD's role is to implement the state law that the legislator adopted rather than opine on what better policy looks like. So the 16-foot the 16-foot height limit came from the state law, which HCD has to enforce. Resilient energy efficient buildings with grants, et cetera. There's a working group at Casita Coalition, and Josh, shut me off whenever you want me to stop talking. That is working with the California Energy Commission on developing a really energy efficient ADU prototype. If you're interested in participating in that dialogue, why don't you contact Tom Limon or Celeste Goya, and they'll hook you up with the other folks working on that. I haven't heard of any ADU specific energy efficient grant programs, but I'm not really an expert in that. We have one question from Andy. Why does it still take a year for an ADU permit? Andy, I think that's something we'll have to talk about over drinks. It shouldn't, but at some places it does. And the thought I'll leave you with is, one of the best practices I've learned is if cities cannot wrangle their bureaucracy to focus and close on these ADU ministerial permits in the spirit which it was conveyed, which is fast and ministerial, then all of the programming around ADUs, financing, innovations won't help very much. The homeowners still can't get a permit out of current planning, building, fire and safety, and all the rest of the engineering divisions that review them. Then it's not going to work very well. And I think that may be one of the reasons why some places are still very slow to see uptick in ADUs. It's not that they don't have programs supporting them, it's that they don't have internal alignment that's led to efficient permitting.
Okay, I'll just add real quickly. San Mateo County got a grant to do energy efficient ADUs, and so they'll have it's called the GLADDUR, GALDUR. They'll make those available for free for anyone who wants those. And then so now we're on to voting. Anyone, if you would just grab 1 or 2 stars, you're limited to 2 stars, and vote for what you think. In our best practice guide, what should we highlight the most? Or if you can't get over here, then just tell us, and we'll vote for you. If you don't tell us, we'll vote for you, but not the way you want.
And how many votes should they do per category?
Oh, I was thinking 2 total, but we could
Okay.
change that rule if you want.
I think some people have already voted more than twice, so let's give them 3 and then.
No one would cheat and vote more than they're
But
supposed
you
to.
didn't make the rules clear at the beginning of the game. For those of us who want to win, we got to know the rules.
Whoever's moving the entire thing, someone grab the list of 50 stars and try to move them. Just grab 1 star. You don't get that many. I'm sure that was an accident.
I keep dropping my star.
Uh-oh. I think you can use the arrow keys to move it too. It's a little slower though. Give everyone just another minute or 2. Someone figured out how to write by hand on the sticky notes. Okay, I'm going to just say real briefly, looks like some trends here. Feel free to vote if you haven't, but starting with the basics, clear and simple codes, good pro ADU codes, totally within jurisdiction's control, and that's where a great place to start. ADU bonus program, affordable ADU bonus program is also super important. Looks like we had the most generally in the policies and the processes. Couple of people identifying with the challenges for the small cities and needing support because they can't do that much by them. They don't have the budgets. Leadership from the top, internal alignment, those got a number of votes also. Nonprofit partnerships got a handful of votes along with that Sonoma County ADU, but also Hello Housing, other groups doing good work. Website, targeted outreach, both got one. ADU hours and ADU leads got a couple, staff training, and then 4 votes, a fair number of votes for just the concerns with the cost, both the permitting cost and the construction cost of ADUs. This was super helpful and hopefully fun. So I think feel free to continue to play at this for a few minutes. I'm going to stop my share and I think we're going to switch to the next portion.
Yeah, so I thought it would be helpful for all of us and just fun for us, given this is, the end of the year. It's been a long year for many of us for many reasons, the pandemic, not the least of which. So I thought we'd have some fun with this today while also learning good things and sharing good information by inviting people who've been really active in advocating for small housing forms and ADUs in their jurisdiction and who are the directors of their respective programs to help talk about these best practices and whether we've hit the mark or missed it or what else we should think about. So joining us now are Jared Baszler, my fellow Casita Coalition board member and founder of Maxable Space out of San Diego. Renee Schomp, the director of the Napa Sonoma ADU nonprofit that works in those counties and those 16 cities. Gary Geiler, the San Diego Assistant Director of Planning Community Development, and Wyatt, the Executive Director of SmartShare from the middle part of the state in San Luis Obispo. Jennifer Duffy, the Executive Director of Hello Housing, who works in a number of local agencies, primarily, I think, in the Bay Area. Garrett Norman, the City of Sacramento Assistant Planner. Welcome, everybody, to the panel. And I thought what we would do in this portion is ask Josh questions or just kind of reflect on what you heard. Anyone want to kick us off?
Sure, I've got a variety of questions for Josh and the group of us panelists and maybe some other visitors here.
All right, welcome Ann.
And Wyatt from SmartShare Housing Solutions in San Luis Obispo County. And so primary questions around, I guess, reality check on affordability levels of units. Really, I guess I'm really curious what people are seeing in successful cities. Maybe to Gary in San Diego, it's not just quantity of units created, but this equity issue and how many units were getting built in the hands or backyards, as it were, of lower income homeowners. So Gary, you got any breakdowns in San Diego of how many ADUs you're getting built in the backyards of lower income homeowners, not just moderate, but below moderate?
We've seen ADUs expand to areas in lower income areas. We don't have the specific numbers, but we're getting up to about 1,000 applications a year now over the past 2 years, which is incredible. And we focused our efforts with the ADU bonus program to go into those areas that are traditionally south of the 8 freeway here in San Diego, those underrepresented communities. And we're seeing a large interest in applying for the ADU bonus program, getting literally hundreds of units into the program, working with the Housing Commission to make sure that it's a seamless process and that people are excited about it and doing it. And once we've seen success with it, so that success begets success, more people want to be involved in it. I think the problems with affordable housing and deed restrictions have completely gone away. People are interested in this new model. And I know Jared's been part of that as well. And it's really come down to a lot of the public process and educating homeowners and developers and policymakers on the impact that it's having. And it's been very successful.
And one thing that I see in that program specifically, Gary, is that it's opening up access to neighborhoods for lower income individuals that would not have access to those neighborhoods otherwise. So not just in low income neighborhoods are we seeing, affordable ADUs being built. They're being built in the neighborhoods that have historically been only accessible to upper middle class homeowners. So it's really creating the situation that we've been trying for in San Diego, which is to spread out our affordable housing across the city rather than, letting the characteristics of the neighborhood specify where it goes.
Yeah, and just to kind of underscore that with a different thought, a lot of jurisdictions that are looking at ADUs and what they're actually renting for are finding that they pretty routinely rent between 60 and 80% of area median income. We just got a note saying we're not seeing the speakers, just Josh. So can the IT folks pull up the panel, talking heads? That'd be great. So, part of ADUs both help low and moderate income homeowners stabilize and house family members, but they also help better integrate on family economics neighborhoods that have been basically walled off to middle income families and for a long time. So it works, I think, on both ends. Next question for Josh or for any of the other panelists.
Oh, you said that like you had a next question, Denise.
Oh, no, I was saying, anyone else have a question or a thought to share?
I have a question. This is Renee Schomp. I'm the director of the Napa Sonoma ADU Center. Pronouns are she, her. Thank you all for having me. It's great to be here. And Josh, excellent job of the synopsis. That was quite a task to take on, and you did it so well. And to that end, I'm so interested in Sacramento allowing the 2 ADUs. And Garrett, I'm just wondering if you can provide any additional background context for us about how you all went about making that happen. What kind of pushback did you experience, if any, and how you overcame it?
Yeah, thank you. Sacramento, we've really been pushing for this missing middle housing and just removing our single family zones and allowing triplexes and duplexes and quadplexes by right in our single family zones. So ADUs are just one of the steps to get there. And so we, made a recommendation to our council to allow 2 ADUs on any lot that has a developed parcel or proposed unit. And it's been widely successful, I would say. We have a lot of density in our more central core area where we have a lot of alley loaded units where people are building 2 ADUs, detached, but they're under one structure in their rear of their properties. And it provides so much flexibility to the homeowners, whether they want to rent them both out for, long-term rentals, or maybe they rent one out and then they use the other one as an Airbnb. There's just a lot of flexibility there. And we're very happy that we did that. And of course, you can interchange them. You can do a junior ADU and a regular ADU, or 2 attached ADUs, 2 detached ADUs. We're not specific on the type there, but we do have if they're both detached, you're capped at the 1,200 square feet. So they could be like 600 and 600 each. But that scenario doesn't exist if it's attached and a detached. So you can build both maximums in that scenario. So there's so much more to, explore. And, we're working on a lot of policy when it comes to housing within our city. And, SB 9 is a huge game changer out there as well, and how this all integrates together. So it's an exciting time within our city, and we have a lot of work ahead of us this coming year. And we are, we're hoping to be a leader here in the state on, promoting housing and helping solve this issue here.
That is a great way to think about the end of this year and the start of next year. We all hope to emulate that with all of the work we're doing in this space. Hey, Jennifer, I want to make sure that we recognize you. I think most of our other panelists have at least said hello. Do you want to say hi? And do you have any questions for Josh or the other panelists?
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Jennifer Duffy, president of Hello Housing, and I am just really impressed with what has been accomplished in this past year all across different jurisdictions throughout California. I echo Renee in that the presentation, Josh, was just an incredible highlight of what we're seeing and being able to see such movement take place. We've been working really closely in the Northern California region, specifically in the Bay Area, and our work has been primarily supporting homeowners directly, meeting them where they're at in their projects and helping them, navigate what we all know can be really complicated. And I will say that what's been so great about these presentations and about seeing these best practices and the conversations that I'm having with jurisdictions, it's been so helpful to be able to highlight what's been working broadly across the region as well as across the state. I think, with everything that's coming to fruition with RENA and housing count and supply, jurisdictions are really scrambling to try and figure out what can their support look like. What are some of the best steps to take with the budgets that they have to move their projects forward? And having, this tool and this commitment from the Casita Coalition to really bring those practices to front and center has just been incredible. So glad to be here, glad to answer questions, and thanks for the time.
Well, thank you for the shout out. I got to give credit to Josh, but also really to the team. Celeste, our staff person, everyone on the staff has done an amazing job pulling all this together. So one of the nice things about working in a coalition is there's a definite team spirit. And I feel like all of you guys are on team More Housing. So it's nice to actually have a More Housing team, because in all the places, in all the rooms that we inhabit from time to time, we may be the only Yes to More Housing person in that space. So it's nice to all be together, at least virtually at this moment. Other questions from panelists? Or Josh, do you have questions of anybody here?
Well, yeah, maybe can we answer Nick's question about how to get good things going? San Mateo County also has a ton of collaboration going on. All their products were multi-city efforts. But Nick, I think I Googled you. It looks like you're Alameda County. And the good news is Alameda County is about to launch a bunch of multi-city products, a website, a workbook. Jennifer and Hello Housing has a big role in that. We're going to be helping with that. So I would expect to see, so for Alameda County, it's in pretty good shape. Generally, I mean, a lot of multi-city efforts start with either foundation funding or county funding. So you either need a county that's kind of interested in not seeing itself as just the unincorporated county, interested in a convening role, or to approach a foundation and kind of pitch the idea. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to get that momentum. The Bay Area, all the counties in the Bay Area now have a housing collaborative similar to the ones that got the San Mateo work done and the Napa Sonoma work done too. So you're welcome to have the planners who are attending those collaborative meetings say ADU should be a high priority for our collaborative, and that actually is an existing source of funding and coordination to potentially move forward. And if there's not those groups, it's going to be a little harder without outside resources.
Can I chime in on that? Josh, totally agree, and thank you, because I wanted to make sure we got to Nick's question. And I think along with the collaboratives, the housing elements being a good opportunity to plant a seed about these collaborative efforts going forward on ADUs and potential sources of funding. And just a good leverage point for jurisdictions to recognize how creating collaboratives on ADUs can be a really helpful way for them to meet their RENA goals. And also just recognizing how much we can replicate each other's work. So Napa Sonoma ADU Center, we launched not just with a goal of serving the 16 jurisdictions, both unincorporated county and cities across Napa and Sonoma, but also to be a very replicable model. And the work that Josh and Baird Driscoll has done in supporting that is also highly replicable. And so just want to say, if folks are interested, we want to be very open source and sharing of how we can help others leverage the resources that we've already created to be able to be, creating these collaboratives throughout the state.
So I have a follow on, Renee, or whoever wants to answer this. So would it is there a useful role to play where we collaboratively through Casita Coalition approach the other MPOs in the state and say, hey, there's this really great collaborative model that can be implemented at the level of the county? Is that something the MPOs are interested? A lot of them have money, planning money, in helping facilitate in their region of the state. Is that what you're thinking about, that it would go through the counties or just making it available?
I'm not saying any particular like figurehead or institution. I think it might vary based on the region, honestly, what's going to be the most effective. Josh, I don't know if you have other thoughts on that as well, or follow up to anything I said.
Yeah, well, I think there's 2 points. I think Denise's one of approaching the other equivalents of ABAG is a great idea. They all have planning money, and they're all looking for ideas. A lot of them are doing ADU work, but a lot of them are not really thinking long-term, like starting a Napa Sonoma ADU center. They're kind of thinking limited products. So I think there's a really good process of engaging those. And then, Renee talked about the opportunity with the housing element. Oh my goodness, slip in a line or two in the housing element and you'll be setting yourselves up for the next 8 years of enjoying that reward. It could be as simple, if you want the collaborative work, as simple as collaborate with neighboring cities to do X, Y, and Z. And then in a year, come back and be like, hey, this is in the housing element. What are we doing to implement it? And staff hate having to say we didn't do something to implement it. So that's an opening for the conversation. And beyond that, if there's policies or programs, slip them in there. It tastes like literally it's like a sentence or two, and it'll set the seed for something that'll grow really big.
And if folks would like sample language on that, feel free to reach out. I've gotten some help from Josh, and we've been talking within our region. So no need to reinvent the wheel.
Great. Jared, do you have any questions for any of the panelists, or any of the panelists have anything else they want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think has been really helpful in the coalition and really helpful with these best practices throughout the year is continuing to see stuff evolve and continuing to see stuff. This is something that obviously we have to stay on top of, and I'm wondering from the panelists if it's never a one and done situation. So as you're moving forward, how are you looking at helping make sure that these programs stay and continue to improve? I just know that it's always something that we see stuff that pops up and then it either gets kneecapped or falls off. So is there anything you guys, I know a lot of the programs in place are working, but are you going back and re-looking at what you've done previously? Anybody can jump in there.
So I can share a little bit there. On one front, so much of the work is also really trying to have a feedback loop to the jurisdictions and the different departments that are providing support. Sorry, I have some stuff going on in the background. It'll pass. I think everything's okay. All right. And that feedback loop is really important. I think it starts oftentimes with leadership and housing, but it's very quickly needing to evolve to those conversations on what we're experiencing in the field, back to the counter, back to planners, helping them recognize, where are we seeing some of the issues showing up that is in direct customer service and direct communication and knowledge and understanding of the different shifts that have taken place in policy at the state level and how that's being translated at the counters. And I think when that whole ecosystem starts to work really smoothly together, it creates that opportunity, I think, for city leadership, county leadership to really be able to look at deeper level policies and opportunities for creating more programs that continue that collaboration. But it's been a really important kind of mid-course review of how our program's been operating is that feedback loop, and it requires some, open-mindedness and some open-heartedness by the planning and building departments, because we are ultimately trying to get them to be a partner in this process, see homeowners as partners in this process for the creation of more housing. And there's a little bit of a delicate dance there, but it's an important mid-course correction and an opportunity, I think, that we have to keep further the goals.
That reminds me of something that I've talked about on a few different webinars, but the whole idea of looking for the unintentional obstructions within your jurisdiction, because you can have the greatest policy in the world and set up these processes that seem like they will work out the gate, only to have it fall flat, or because of historic processes or historic obstructions that you didn't go back in and fix at the same time. So
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think a major part of our success was involving the designers and homeowners early on. We've every time we can, we've updated our AD regs. It doesn't matter if it's midstream, we're not waiting for another state one. We're identifying conflicts with the building code. Let's address that, because we saw that. So I would encourage other jurisdictions to reach out first as part of your regulatory scheme, to involve them up front, to let them know what you're doing. I've been kind of carrying this banner for ADUs for almost 5 years now, and this has been great to have Casita Coalition and other members get involved and help educate the public. I want to comment on Napa Sonoma. That's a great website. That is really, really key to it. A lot of the city's websites are kind of clunky and just like, here's the regs, here's our process. But to have all this involvement from others and nonprofits, it's been a windfall for us in terms of the help that we're getting in educating the public. So
I have a follow-up question with Gary. Gary, I know you did a lot of outreach in the earlier days of the ADU program. Were you given a directive specifically for you individually to lead the charge on outreach in the communities, or was it a team effort there?
I took it upon myself, frankly, because I've seen enough code changes in the past that change the code, we put it on a shelf. Okay, yeah, we updated our code. I said, this is so important. This is addressing a need for infill development, moderate income housing, all that sort of stuff. I said, we need to promote this. And, we got the green light from the previous administration. We have it from the current administration, that go out to as many different groups as possible, nonprofits, financing, housing groups, realtor associations, all of them. Go out and talk to them, explain what these new rules are, and do that outreach. And it's been really helpful, and it draw more people into the process, so that when we went back for the next update, they were already involved. They already knew what the issues were, especially architects and designers, on, hey, we're seeing some conflicts here, let's address them in the next update. So it's been very helpful. But now it really is a team effort with everyone is on board here at the city. And like Jared mentioned, bring in your building department, because they are key to this whole review process. Bring in your intake and issuance side of the house, because these have to be expedited. They got to be approved within 60 days. Put those measures in place. Think about those types of things too, on how do you intake these? How do you prioritize those in terms of reviews? And then talk with your staff and let them know the importance of ADUs for housing.
Great, thank you.
Does anyone want to comment on how important fee reductions are in terms of encouraging people to build ADUs?
I would love to give a quick little feedback on that. So fee reductions are absolutely, are so important. But at the end of the day, saying that you reduce the fees and you give the fees that were there in place before, and then the fees that are now, that you're charging, remember that at the end of the day, the homeowner only remembers how much they paid to the city, or to a city department, or to the schools, or to the water, district, the municipal fees that they paid in this process. So when even if it's not something that you have direct control over, being able to identify all of that, so that at least they know that you reduce the fees where you could, rather than giving a homeowner the impression that they're all gone, or that like they've been reduced more than they have. And so that's something that I think is a lot of cities don't necessarily have the control over the other departments, but helping homeowners understand that these are the fees that have been reduced, and this is why, and these are the fees that are, you'll still have to pay, so that they don't, anticipate less than, these budgets are fairly tight. So, they can't go back to the board of directors and get more funds. So.
That I think is a really important note, and there's plenty of work to do in this space across the state. And I think this conversation is really just the beginning of an evolving conversation about really, rebuilding local planning departments to focus on streamlining and expediting. When I was current planning chief, that was not my job. My job was to figure out creative ways to slow things down, because that was the political directive that I got. And it's a work in progress, and it's going to take years. So I think it's important for us to continue to have these conversations. I should give shout outs to people who are doing an awesome job, both to help other people find the way forward and also to inspire people to start that journey themselves. So I wanted to wrap up because we're at time. Thank everyone very much for joining us today. If you have additional thoughts you want to share, please send them along. For those of you who have joined the Casita Coalition recently, thank you very much. For those of you who have not, we will be issuing some members only tools in the coming year, and we would love to be able to send them to everybody. So be sure to click on our website under the join button or the renew button. Next year, we are also doing, as I mentioned, our hot topic webinars. These are our tentative topics. You'll see some things that came up today in the best practices, including unpermitted ADUs, multifamily ADUs, energy efficiency, and so forth. But we're open to pivoting and wrapping in a good topic if we miss something. So I think I mentioned we would look at the coastal commissions. We'll have to weave that in there somewhere too. And if you like what we're doing, please give us a shout out on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you're a member, you will get our regular newsletter that you can share out as well. Thank you all very much for joining us. Please have a happy and safe holiday. If you have any questions about today's event or about the coalition, you can follow the question in the chat info at casitacoalition.org. Thank you all very much, and happy holidays.